Hey all, welcome back to Jitterbug Home Services. Last time you guys saw me with this door, I was doing the modification on it. I had cut quite a bit off of the bottom and put in a new piece of wood on the bottom to shore that up and puttied that, and then I had also cut the side, messed up the cut again, put on a 2x4 and puttied the living crap out of it. Today I'm going to sand it. Hopefully I'm going to hang it. I still have to build out the door frame for that. It's been a while, I know that, but this is for my house, and when things happen at my house, well, they happen slowly because everybody else needs me to. So I'm going to let you guys watch. I'm going to sand this with a random orbital sander, and then we'll get it down smooth, check it square, check it's level, and then we'll start working on getting it hung in the door frame so that we can have our door. There's a door there currently. It's a swinging door, and we just feel like it's letting a lot of AC out because it leads to the laundry room. The laundry room is not finished, and the laundry room does not have AC or heat, and it really doesn't have good seals around it. So we're going to get this hung in there, and that way we can at least put some weather stripping on it and keep the AC and heat inside the house. Obviously the putty has had plenty of time to dry. It doesn't need a month to dry. It dries in an hour or a couple hours, depending on how thick it is. But because I didn't have time to get to it, it got about a month. There are a couple of small cracks in the putty part. We'll see if that'll fix up with sanding. If not, I can always add more putty to it. Down here it looks really good. I'm going to start with a heavier, I'm going to start with 80 grit sandpaper. Probably a lot heavier than I need, but I'll be gentle with it. And then we'll go all the way up to maybe 120 or 150 or so. The random orbital that I'm using is Metabo brand. Definitely not top of the line. I could always go with the Festool, but the Festools are like $700, and the Metabo ones, I think I got it for like $40. It works better with the vacuum attached, but my vacuum's at another job site right now, so we're going to use it without a vacuum.
If I make back home, I'm just stuck here with you. At the bottom for the ocean, I'm at the bottom of the sea.
So the point of sanding all this is to make it perfectly flush, and that means make the 2x4 perfectly flush with the door. You are, with the putty, the screws, trim screws that I used, you are creating this as one piece. So the 2x4 is now going to be the same as the door. It'll all be connected together permanently, and it's all going to be one piece. It's going to become part of the door. So when you see me sanding, you'll see me stop and move my hand along it just to see what it feels like. What I'm feeling for is if there's any lip at all, if there's any deviation between the feeling of this and the feeling of this. Now, of course, the texture is a little bit different. The door is made with a texture to imitate wood. The 2x4 obviously is wood. But I know that the 2x4 was a little bit thicker than the door, just a touch. And so I'm sanding it to smooth it all down. get rid of the putty, and what I'm looking for while I'm paying real close attention is while I'm sanding the 2x4, am I changing the color of the door? That means, am I taking off any of the top layer of the door? If I am, that means the sandpaper is hitting both surfaces, which means it's flush. So I'm going to keep sanding this side. Of course, I'll speed it up for you again because this has got to be the most boring thing to watch if it was in regular speed. But I'll let you guys watch me do this side as well. The other side still has a few scratches on, or a few cracks on it, so I'll have to fill those. I'll probably use Durham's Rock Hard Putty. And I'll show you guys, it's a powder mixture that you mix with water. It's a really, really hard putty. Not good for exterior applications, but this is an interior door, so it doesn't matter. Anytime you use Durham's Rock Hard, you want to paint afterwards, but I'll be painting this anyways, so again, it doesn't matter, it doesn't affect it. So I'm gonna keep sanding for now. The other thing you see me do occasionally is I'll stop the sander and I'll flip it over and look at it, or I'll feel it with my hand, and that's me feeling the grit on the sandpaper to see if I need to change it. You do need to pay attention to the sandpaper and how it feels, because it will get gummed up with some of the powder residue, or it'll wear off the grit, and so it is smart to change it every once in a while. I have a pack of like 600 discs of sandpaper, so I have plenty. But it's a good idea to change it when it needs it, otherwise you're sanding for no reason. So obviously I took more material off the door that time. The reason was that when I was sanding, if I wasn't taking any material off the 2x4, but I was taking material off the door, that means the 2x4 was sitting lower than the door. So I was doing my best to bring the door width down to match the 2x4. Same exact thing I did on the other side with bringing the 2x4 down to match the door. I was just bringing the door down to match the 2x4. Now, when I'm sanding, I'm obviously sanding off the top layer of the door. The door is like it's almost like a cardboard on the outside, and these doors suck. If they're not going to hit water, it doesn't matter, but it's basically like a cardboard material on the outside, and so it's not the best thing in the world. So you have to be mindful when you're sanding it, if you're going to sand down that material, that you don't gouge it and you don't rip it. If the sander grabs that material and tries to rip it, stop sanding, or pick a higher grit sandpaper so that you don't rip it. I didn't rip any of it, and I just sanded it down a bit. And just like sanding the 2x4 or sanding the putty, all you're doing is taking a little tiny bit of material off so that they match, and it becomes one piece. Now, you saw me sand the ends for a little bit longer. When I do that, I'm laying the sander flat against the end, and I'm watching the gapping between the sandpaper and the material so that I can sand it until it matches up. Then I do a quick sand on the entire bottom if I need to, just to make it all match up nice and straight. And then when I sand the outside edge, it's just to smooth it down so that I don't have any rough pieces, and it's going to be a finished product when it's done. If you wanted to curve your edges, you could always pull the sander around in a curved motion around the edges, and I'll show you that without turning it on, because I don't want to curve these edges. So you're sanding here and you want to curve that edge, you just come up like this as it's moving, and it'll curve that edge for you, so it's not such a sharp edge. Because it's a door, you want it to be a sharp edge. If it was a custom wood door, you know, you might want some curvature in it, and that's fine, but I don't want any curvature in this one, so I didn't do it. I'm going to measure the opening. I'll go get some Durham's Rock Hard and mix that up and put that on the small cracks that I have around. Those will have to be sanded, of course, again before this thing gets primed and painted. But I'm going to measure the opening in the door just to make sure everything's going to line up. When I go to mount it, I'm probably going to mount the hinges in and mount the door on before I put any kind of stoppers on, before I miter in the latch plate. So I'll let you guys see all of that as I do it. So with anything you're mixing, it's always a good idea to read the directions. I'm not going to do that. The reason I'm not going to do that is, well, there's a couple of reasons. One, I've done this before. And two, when I use this powder mixture for each different project, I know the consistency that I like to work with for each thing, and so I just kind of try to match what I prefer to work with on each one. I'm using just an old putty container for this. It has some excess putty in it. I might run into hard spots, we'll see. I'm not really worried. Pour in some putty, some mixture. It's dry powder, you can see that. I'm going to put a touch of water in there. I'm going to mix it with my putty knife, and we'll go from there. If I need to add more, I can. If I need less water, I can always add more powder. I don't want too much powder, just because I don't need to do a whole lot of patching. But, there, see, that's way too wet. I'll show it to you right there. It's watery, and I don't want it watery. So I'm going to add more powder. That's why I add just a touch at first, just because I really don't want to mix too much up, because I don't need a lot. Grimm's Rock Hard is really good stuff. I'm not sponsored by them. I'm not sponsored by anybody. It's known in the handyman contractor community as being really, really good putty to use, but it's got its purposes, and it's not all the purposes. So that's about the consistency I want. It's more water than normal, but I want this to fill in some gaps, and so I'm going to use it at this consistency. You can see the gaps I'm filling in. They're just little hairlines, and so that's why I wanted it a little bit more wet than normal, is because I don't need it to build up material. I need it to fill in. So I'm going to put a whole bunch down. I'm going to press on it with my knife, and then I'm going to take my knife and push down pretty hard on the edge and pull it across, and that's going to fill in all my gaps. So take any excess material off of there, put it into the next bit of gaps. Same thing. Across, fill it in, across, fill it in, and pull across. And that's just how that works, is you just want to push it down into the gaps just to make it fill those gaps in. You're not trying to build up any material, because I really don't feel like sanding too much again when I come back after it's dried. But I definitely want it to fill in those little hairline cracks, just so that they don't become a bigger issue after the door is hung, after everything's painted, you know. Once it's hung, of course I can still do all this repair work, but it's not as easy as having it off the hinge and laying here on my sawhorses. This just makes life a lot easier to have it laying down in front of me, basically as a table that I'm working on. So that's good for that side. I'm going to flip it over and do the other side as well. My sawhorses have grip tape on them, so you see when I pick this door up and when I move it, I'm not dragging it. It's because I don't want, the grip tape is sticky sandpaper. I don't want it to sand down any spots. I don't want it to chip any paint and pull any wood. I'm trying to keep it from just taking any more material off just because I'm moving the door. It will, especially over time. I'm moving stuff back and forth, flipping things back and forth. It'll definitely take off more material, and especially after you paint, it becomes a big problem. Put that on there. It's already starting to dry up on me. You can see it's getting a little bit more flaky. That's because it's drying. That's okay. I'll still work with it how I can. If I need to add water, I can. I don't think this stuff works that well when you add more water to it. It's kind of like hot mud, which is fast dry drywall putty. When you add more water, it doesn't work quite as well. Another tip with this stuff and hot mud is the temperature of the water matters. So if you want it to stay wet longer, you usually want to use colder water. If you want it to dry faster, use warmer water, and it affects the dry time. The other thing you can do, I'm not going to with this because I'm not in a hurry, is once the putty's on, and you can do the same thing with drywall putty. You come over here with a heat gun and put a light amount of heat on it. You of course don't want to hold it in one spot for too long. You want to move that gun around a lot just to get the heat spread out through everything. But you can do that and it'll speed up the dry time. That's the point of using heat guns. That's why they sell cordless heat guns. That means battery operated heat guns for people in my industry, is because a lot of times we're in a bit of a hurry. We still want to do a good job, but getting the job done faster is either preferable to us because we have other jobs that we need to get to, or it's preferable to the customer because they're not giving us a lot of time to get a repair done. So I'm just going to make sure this is as smooth as I can get it, just so I don't have too much sanding to do when it dries. And then we'll move on, do something else for a little bit. Put the line right there. This is where attention to detail matters. There's another hairline right here, so we're gonna, pretty dry, but I'm gonna put some more into that. As it dries, if it's still workable, which right now this is still kind of workable, you just put a little bit more pressure on it. It still works. So you're obviously not going to see how hard this stuff gets being on the door and being that I put it on so thin. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to leave this in the bucket that it's in, the little container. That way when we come back to look at it or to work on it, just to check how dry it is, I'll let you guys see how hard it actually gets in this bucket. And it's a good like meter to show you how hard it really does get, how well it really does work. That way you know what kind of material you're working with. When I use thin set or drywall putty on people's houses or on my own house, there's lots of times that I actually, when I clean out, I leave a big pile of it in the grass, and that's got a couple of reasons. One of them is I can check how dry that is to know how dry my wall is, so I don't have to go in there and stomp through their house over and over to check to make sure everything is drying. And usually when I pour it out on the grass, you know, it's a big pile, and so it's a lot thicker than what it's going to be on the wall or on their floor or whatever. And so if it dries up and hardens up in that big ball that I leave on the grass, then I know for a fact that it's dried up on the inside. And that's because the inside's thinner and it's going to dry faster. The other reason that I do that is for cleanup purposes. Once it dries and hardens, I can actually pick that entire piece up as one piece, and it's not just this watery mess that I have to deal with. So the door is sitting in the sun, so I'm leaving my bucket in the sun. We'll check on this. I'm not going to clean this off. I always use a grinder and my putty knives just to make life easy on myself. Lots of times I don't have a water source around, so I just let it dry on there, and then I use a grinder. When I clean them with a grinder, I also sharpen them. So I'm going to leave this bucket right here, and then once it's dry, we'll come back and check that. Right now I'm going to do measurements and make sure everything's going to match up in the house, and I'm sure I can find something else to do. So, I wanted to replace a handle on one of my hammers, so I'll probably do that. Alright, so I went and spent time with my wife and kid instead of doing anything. So the putty's dry. I'll show you that in a second. I just measured the door frame, and my current door opening is curved, which happens. It's nothing new. It's just I was hoping it wasn't. Anyways, the smallest part is 31 1/4, and that's right in the middle, so it's got this fun little curve to it. I measured the door. The door is just past 31 1/2, so I'm gonna put a straight edge on it, and I'm gonna trim it down a little bit. I'm gonna trim it on 2x4 side before I sand any of the putty, and that way when I go to sand, I can sand down that side that I have to trim as well. Before I do that, I figured I'd show you the putty when I told you that I leave it in the container to see how hard it gets for if it's dry yet. This way you'll be able to see it. So here it is on the edge of the container, and sure, I can push on it and you can tell there's no movement, but That might give you a better idea. Even when I'm trying to cut into it, it's pretty hard. So I got that piece to flake off. Yep, I'd say that's hardened up. So that means the door is going to be hardened up. So we'll go check the door. Just why not? Yeah, that's good putty. So I'm gonna mark a line, put a straight edge on, get out my circular, and I'm gonna trim this down some. Before I do that, I'm gonna measure it like 14 more times. I'm gonna measure the door frame like 14 more times just to make sure that I'm right, that I do need to trim this. When I go to mount this, obviously the top and bottom are gonna be, since it's a curved door frame, the top and bottom are gonna have a little bit more space. I'll fix that with the stopper that I'm gonna put in, and then when I put weather seal on it, it'll still be airtight seal. Not airtight, but you know, for a house. It'll still keep the cool air in and the hot air in when I need it to be. And so we're gonna do that now. So I'm not gonna show that just because it's measuring. It's really not exciting to watch. All right, I trimmed the door down to the right size, measured the height. It's 1/2 inch short, which is perfect. I'll of course be 1/4 inch lower than the very top so it doesn't touch. I will fix that 1/4 inch gapping with my stopper that I put in as my framing. The 1/4 inch at the bottom, I have a weather strip that I'm going to put on the bottom of the door. That'll take care of that 1/4 inch, so that doesn't matter. The sides are pretty tight, might have to skim them down. We'll see once I get the hinges mortised in and get everything set on. I sanded again to get the putty, you know, all the way smoothed out. I had already cut it down by about 1/2 inch or so on the side to get the width better. I'm gonna start painting now, and I actually grabbed my small sprayer that some of you may have seen me use before. I do have it in some of my videos, at least one of them. I grabbed my small sprayer, and it was completely clogged with just everything in the world. Because I don't take care of my tools until I have time at home. Well, I try to, but on the job site I usually have limited resources. Turns out at home I also have limited resources. I don't have any paint thinner, I don't have any acetone, I don't have any denatured alcohol. Those are the 3 things I would have used to clean out paint from a paint sprayer. That would make sense. So instead I grabbed gasoline and washed the entire paint sprayer with gasoline. Now I can take a wild guess that the directions say don't use gasoline. But I have another paint sprayer, so if this one completely fails because I just washed it with gasoline, it's fine. I'll grab my other one. The other one I got for free, so that helps. The other thing is, this is a business that I run, and so this stuff is all paid for. It's all, you know, a small part of all of my expenses go into each estimate. So if I need to replace it, I can replace it and call it a business expense. And for anybody that thinks that's wrong, understand that if I don't use that business expense, it's profit. So what I'm actually doing is cutting into my profit. So I'm going to paint this door, and I'll show you that in just a moment. All right, it's recording you. Say what you want to say.
Hi, make it up and make her mommy.
You help mommy?
No.
You didn't help mommy?
No.
Aren't you supposed to help mommy?
No.
I'm pretty sure mommy would have said you were supposed to.
Help, Daddy.
Oh, you're going to help daddy now? Careful, it's got paint all over it. I cleaned it a little bit, so kind of got paint all over it.
Me hold.
Well, don't hold it because it's got paint all over it. It's going to get paint all over your hand. What do you mean help? Just let it go. Oh, no, now you got paint on you. See my pants? That's a good paint rag. Wipe them off.
Yeah, paint.
Ew, paint.
Me picking my eye.
And you got paint everywhere? Did you
Yeah.
get it off your hands?
What?
Get it off your hands. The last thing we need on any of your clothes is paint. Come here. That's your hand. Yucky
I
paint.
need that the water that's or no.
Daddy's water? No,
Yes.
why don't you go get your own water? Alright, you should be good.
Okay.
Okay, go help mommy. Alright, I found a spare quart of Kills 2 in my shed. I have no idea how old it is. It was old enough that I could not pry the top off and had to really wrench down on it with a very large flathead screwdriver. So it's old. I don't know when I bought it. Anyways, I'm using the Kills. I shook up the can so it's mixed. I'm using the Kills as a primer. It is a primer, so it's fine. It's not my preferred, but it's what I had, so good enough. For a trade secret on how primers work, if you need to prime something but you don't have primer, as long as you don't need the attributes of primer, like the sealing attributes that some primers have, and all you're doing is a color change, you can just mix up whatever paint that's close to that color that you're changing to cover up the old paint, and then you can paint it with the paint that you have. That'll save you a little bit of money, and if you don't, if you have paint just sitting around, or if you want to buy the discount paint from the store, because they sell whenever you buy paint at the store, even if you have it colored. Most stores, Home Depot and Lowe's, will allow you to return that paint still. They'll give you your money back, and then they'll still sell the paint at a discount. So painters go in there if they don't have their own random paint sitting around, and they'll go in there and they'll buy up all the clearance paint just to use as a primer. So you can always do that if you want to. It won't hurt anything. So I'm gonna hope that my sprayer works and get spraying this. Also, some random dog just showed up. I don't know whose it is, where it came from, but whatever. So hopefully it doesn't pee on everything. Oh, good. Now it's peeing on everything. Obviously, I don't have a paint shield for all this. Of course, since I've spotted it on the camera too. But anyway, try to catch you guys up so you don't get paint again though. So with seeing how fast the paint goes when I spray it, it gives you a better understanding of why I prefer to spray when I can. Because using a paintbrush and rollers and all that, it just takes a lot more time. So it's fine, good enough for me. I'm gonna let this dry. While this dries, I'll do whatever project I can find to do, and then we'll flip it over when it's dry and we'll do the other side.